Welcome to Elevate, a podcast where we sit down with the women shaping workplace culture as some of the biggest names in the business. These are the leaders navigating change, putting people first, and keeping teams connected and engaged every single day. Elevate is brought to you by Line Zero, a global employee experience consultancy firm that partners with organizations to create connected workplaces. Tune in to learn how today's leaders are breaking barriers and building cultures where employees truly thrive.
Welcome back to Elevate by Line Zero. I am your host, Joy Fajardo, and today we have an absolute powerhouse joining us. Manuelita Cherizard, MBA, is the Chief Human Resources Officer at the Royal Ontario Museum. Yes, guys, you heard that right. The ROM. She is a trailblazer in HR with over 20 years of experience across industries, and she's here to share her incredible journey, her passion for empowering talent, and the innovative ways she's transforming employee experience. Manuelita, welcome to Elevate. We're so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited and looking forward to sharing some thoughts and insights.
100%. And we are so looking forward to having you with us. So let's dive right in because I know our listeners are eager to hear your story. So to get started, your career is nothing short of inspiring. You've worked in private sector, in public sector, in non-for-profit, and now you are leading HR at one of Canada's most iconic cultural institutions. But I want to rewind back. Looking back, what actually sparked your passion for human resources, and how did your journey lead you to the Royal Ontario Museum?
Well, if I think back to when I was starting university, I was fortunate enough to work at the same time and was interested in business administration, commerce. However, I did have the opportunity to observe the people who were responsible for HR in the places where I worked. My curiosity was piqued by the level of involvement that they had in the business, by the level of opportunity they had to help others, help their colleagues, while at the same time being a central point of contact for employee questions, for employee issues, concerns, etc. Being a naturally curious person, I felt that this was a field that might be of interest to me because I would get a lot of information and be involved in the life of the organization. I was also very intrigued by the opportunity to help people, to support people in their journey at the employer. I'm very interested in what are some of the key drivers for business, what are some of the organizational priorities, and how people contribute to that. That's always been a natural interest for me. So HR seemed like the right fit, and I can say that it's absolutely been all of those things plus the opportunity to participate in strategic business planning and other business aspects that I probably didn't think of when I first got into the function. As far as my journey leading to the ROM, I've always been quite strategic around the roles I've taken. In each move I've made, whether it's to a new organization or a new industry, I always looked for an opportunity to not only contribute, but build on what I already knew, build on some of the skills, and learn about a new organization, a new industry, and continue feeding that curiosity that I have that is quite a driver in my life. So as I worked for various organizations and got into the public sector, picked up experience around labor relations and interest around cultural institutions, the ROM opportunity was a great fit for all of those things that are part of my past experience, but also that ongoing curiosity. And of course, my love of museums. So everything aligned very well. And these were some of the things that ROM was looking for as we have a very compelling strategic vision for the next few years that started even before I came on board.
Wow, that's amazing. I love how your journey is really rooted in purpose. Like, number one, you mentioned helping people and also your passion, your genuine passion for business strategically, right? I love that. And it's just so refreshing to hear how you've carried that through every stage and every industry where you've been part of. Speaking of passion, one thing that really stands out about you is your commitment to mentoring and also talent development. Those probably are two big things for you as well. So you've been a champion for mentoring and helping others grow. I imagine you've seen some incredible transformation over the years. Can you share a story about a time when mentoring made a real difference? It can be someone else's career or even in your own.
Yes. So there's a couple of examples that come to mind pretty quickly. So in general, mentoring has always been important both to me as someone even early in career who was always looking to learn and grow, but also now that I've acquired more experience, I've acquired more knowledge, I think there's an opportunity to give back and to help those who are in the situation that I was in previously. So I do really aim to mentor up and coming professionals, whether they're within HR or outside of HR, because I think that some of the tools, insights that I would like to share, that I want to share with others, are not necessarily only HR specific. So that's my general statement around mentoring and why it's so important to me. But I'm going to talk about my personal experience with mentoring because I think it really gives a sense to people of what an impact it can make. As I shared earlier, was really clear around why I wanted to get into HR. I didn't fall into HR. It was really quite deliberate. It was quite focused. So that's how I've run my career. That's how I've evolved. So the difference that mentoring has made, it was really to help me refine some of the skills, some of the areas for development, and just be conscious of them throughout my career. So we all come to the table with various strengths, right? For me, some of my strengths were around analytics, understanding of business, that curiosity, that ability to take huge amounts of information and distill it into something that was more simple and palatable. But the side where mentoring really helped was just really redirecting some of my energy and passion so that I was able to communicate more clearly with folks, because those were areas that in my excitement, in my energy, I wasn't always going at the speed that was necessary in order to bring people along. So mentoring really helped me to refine that. And I've been fortunate enough to always find mentors who were appreciative of some of the strengths that I brought to the table, but who were also very willing to give me very honest feedback, very clear insights around some of the things that I could do to continue improving and to become a more effective professional and then a more effective leader.
That's a very powerful example, right? Like it's a different way of seeing mentorship. Like when you become a mentor, yes, you are teaching someone, but you yourself is also learning. I think that's what I get from what you mentioned. Like you're also learning how you can communicate and how to slow down because in the
Yes.
face, in the HR's face, like you mentioned it's quite fast. And because you think of yourself as a mentor, then you have to think about how your mentee is feeling. Like, how is he or she receiving the messages? I love that.
Exactly.
I really like that
Exactly.
point. It's just a
Yeah.
different outlook in
Yes.
that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's what's been helpful to me is to remember those lessons from the early mentors that I had, who kind of said, okay, see you're on, I see you're on a trajectory. And I remember specifically an SVP very early on, one of my first HR jobs said, I see you're really ambitious, you're curious, you have the drive. Here are some things that I'd like you to look out for. And here are opportunities for you to actually apply those. This person was also a champion in the sense that when projects came up that might have been assigned to people with a little more experience or with a broader set of skills than me, who was just fresh, that person said, well, why don't you involve Manuelita and give her an opportunity to contribute all that energy and passion that she's got. And at the same time, she's going to learn. So because of that person, I got, for example, a coach very early on, and that was not something that was accessible to people at my level here. I was involved in a global project and played a really key role in that project that I would never have expected. So it's really important for me to remember the impact and then to be able to apply that when I'm mentoring people now and in past years.
That's amazing. I love how your mentor before had been your advocate. Because
Yes.
I think that's one of the key roles of being a mentor is like, someone has to trust you, right?
Yes.
For you to get that one big project, that one big break. And really, it shows based on the example you gave. Now, I can see how that philosophy would have shaped your leadership style at Wrong as well. So I want to talk about what it's like to lead an HR department for such a unique organization. So, the Royal Ontario Museum, as we know, is such a fascinating place. It's not just a workplace, it's a cultural institution with
Yes.
a mission to inspire discovery, inspire curiosity, right?
Yes.
What's unique about leading HR in this kind of environment? And how do you align your HR strategies with the ROM's mission?
Yes. So, I mean, we could spend a whole hour, 2 hours on the unique differences of leading HR within a cultural institution. But let me just maybe focus on a few kind of key differences that have not only influenced how HR gets done within our environment, but also the types of things that we focus on and that we prioritize. So, a cultural institution such as a museum, very mission based, so a strong mission. And that means that people who work within the museum are often motivated by contributing to that mission and wanting to make sure that they are part of this bigger thing that we're all in service of. So that means that people are coming to the museum not necessarily for the same reasons that they would go to other organizations. And I don't want to pick on banks, but if we think of why people go to a bank, it's not always the same reason as people will come to a museum or a cultural institution with that priority around mission and the vision. The other piece is that being a large cultural institution means we have a wide scope of different types of roles. I always say to people, what we see as visitors to ROM, we've got that front-facing visitor experience, and it's a wonderful thing. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of complexity because you have everything from roles that are focused on research and curatorial and really museum specific expertise and very niche expertise. And then you've got things like, we have a retail store, so you need people who are good at retail. We have security, so we need people who have the skills to be providing that security for the museum and for the visitors. We have housekeeping internally, so it's not a third party. So again, a different set of skills. And then we've got all of the professions that you would find in other organizations, finance, IT, etc. So it's a real variety of different types of roles, which means that we need to be agile in HR in dealing with and understanding these different types of roles, types of resources, and also supporting them. Another thing is being a public sector agency, being a cultural institution, being a not-for-profit means that we've got limited resources in general, and we have to make choices around what we prioritize, where we focus our time and energy and dollars even. And then last but not least, you started the conversation talking about ROM and the institution that it is and how it's an attractive, a central point within Toronto, within Ontario. So with that role as a community central point comes obligations and expectations, right? From the visitors, from the community, from the multiple stakeholders that we have. So that means that in our organization, there are a lot of forces at play. There are a number of relationships that need to be maintained. And these are key and important relationships. So again, as an HR team, as an HR leader, I always have to be conscious that not only are our leaders dealing with that, but our employees are also feeling some of the pressures, some of the influences from those different stakeholder groups, and I would say community expectations. Now, with regards to aligning HR strategy with the organization strategy, our big focus is making sure that all of the people programs, whether it be talent management, whether it be recruiting, attraction, retention, performance management, all of those have to help people do their best work in support of the organization's objectives. So in order for the organization to reach its objectives, to fulfill its mandate and mission, we need people, and we need people doing the right things and being supported in what they do. So those, I would say overall, that's the key piece. And there are really a number of things that we do to help us stay on track, including really understanding what the organization's objectives are, and then making the link with what does that mean for the people and what does that mean for HR in support of those people.
What you said last is so fascinating because it's such a simple concept, but that's really the key, right? You need to understand the objective like above so that you can distribute the information to the people on the grounds, right? So I think that's super important in terms of distributing or making everyone aware of the bigger mission of the organization.
Yeah.
And to that point, it's also a reminder for us that HR isn't just about policies, but it's also about purpose. I think that's the key there. Another way, so making here a slight pivot, but one of the ways that you bring that purpose to life is actually through your work in diversity and inclusion. So I want to dive into that next. You've been a trailblazer in fostering diversity and inclusion, especially in recruitment and employee engagement. So what are some of the most impactful initiatives that you have led, and how have they shaped the culture at ROM?
I'm going to speak just about a few things that have been done. So ROM was already on its DEIA journey, and really, there was a desire and a willingness to really focus on that. And so when I came on board, one of the first pieces of my mandate was around really helping the organization to have more focus on DEIA, helping the leaders to have opportunities to build more awareness, to understand how DEIA fits into the various parts of the work they do and how they manage their teams and the organization. So very quickly, we focused on leadership, educating leadership, giving the leaders an opportunity to build awareness, to build knowledge through a very simple training process, but that was very impactful, where they had resources that they received, so reading, videos, etc., that they would look through, and then there would be a group discussion about some of the highlights, some of the learnings, some of the ways that what they had learned could be applied in their groups, and also some of the opportunities to apply things across ROM. So the senior management team went through a number of different sessions focused on various aspects of DEIA, whether it was power dynamics to, color dynamics, to really looking at various aspects of DEIA and how, as a leader, they can be more inclusive. So there was that training. We also have had specific training on key topics, whether it's Indigenous inclusion, LGBTQ plus inclusion, being aware of and very conscious of unconscious bias and how the role that can play as a leader and as employees. And also making sure overall that DEIA is part of how we do business, is part of leadership conversations, so that there's always that level of awareness, that level of focus, because the last thing we want is to just have a program or just have a training course and then after for people to kind of forget and go back to whatever they were doing before. So it is one of the corporate objectives every year as we have our strategic objectives. And it is part of all of the conversations that we have as a leadership team. There's always something that is touching on the topic and how it's integrated into our day-to-day. Another thing that I'm very proud of and that was very helpful for the organization is we did what we called a demographic survey to get a sense of who's here, what are some of the areas where people might have more interest or more needs, and then to determine, as we need to prioritize, given our limited resources, where we would focus some of the initiatives, some of the DEIA initiatives. So I would say that that switch from looking at DEIA as, oh yeah, we've got a program that we need, et cetera, to really having it as part of everyday, oh yeah, of course we're gonna do this, and of course we're gonna talk about DEIA, and of course we're going to continue looking for opportunities to build awareness and accelerate knowledge. That's been the biggest impact. And of course, the numbers actually speak to how it's changed the makeup of our employee base, which is great, right? We didn't even need to set targets. And it's just happening because we've got that focus. We've got another example is our recruiting process and making sure that we reached out to a large variety of candidates. So going from a post and pray approach to where are we actually posting, and are these places where we will have a variety of communities of different types of candidates that will be having access.
Those are really inspiring initiatives, folks. I hope that you're making notes here. The trainings, number one, demo surveys, demographic surveys, and also being more intentional into how you recruit, how you outsource your new people. I think that's super powerful. I do have a follow-up question for the trainings. You mentioned being very intentional and keeping it on top of mind, but on top of the actual, so one training day or a couple of training days, are there reinforcement? How, or are they kind of spread throughout the year? How do they work? How do you
Yeah.
keep enforcing them?
It's spread throughout. And one of the things that we've been fortunate enough to be able to do is that once there's a training, the next training kind of builds on it. Or we refer back to the other training and how that feeds into what we're trying to do. So it's been helpful. Of course, lots of opportunity for improvement, but it's been very helpful to be able to refer to, oh yeah, so remember we did, for example, unconscious bias and how that impacts. But now that you're more conscious of the biases, let's make sure you understand the different types of um, employees, some of the various aspects of diversity that your employees are bringing to the table, and how you can support the employees, what might be some of the needs, et cetera. So really making sure that it's not a one and done, but it's an ongoing level of, let's refer to X that we've done before and how it feeds into Y that we're doing now.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Manuelita. It's just amazing to see how you're not just talking about it, but also you're living it and you're leading it. That's the most important part. So now I'll shift gears a bit and talk about measuring the impact of the initiatives that you've mentioned and more, right? So in whatever team, it's really sometimes hard to show that what we're doing is making sense, like it matters, or making impact. But our listeners, for sure, and I am also curious to hear from you, how do you measure the success of your initiatives in HR? Are there any kind of metrics or success stories that stand out to you to kind of prove that the way you're doing it is actually working?
Yes. So there's a few metrics. I'll divide them into formal and informal. So formal metrics, we regularly compile metrics around the usual, right? Turnover, what's going on with regards to recruitment. So not only numbers, but types, retention. We also look at what our demographics look like high level. So the information that we do have access to, a lot of it, some of it is voluntary, but some of it is just part of our HR information systems. And we also look at things like the leadership team and what's the composition of the leadership team. So those are metrics that we look at regularly, and we do see progression. One of the things that I spoke about the demographic survey and how that showed that there had been progression because we were able to measure profile of the organization from a diversity perspective with the length of service. So it was clear that there were recently that profile had changed and become more diverse than it was in the past. So that's definitely a formal metric that was clearly showing progress or success. Informal metrics are the types of issues coming up when we have either employee concerns, management looking for support from HR for various things going on in the organization or in their teams, and the types of issues that come up, even in something as interesting as, what are the grievances about, right? Are they more about how people are being treated, or are they more about process things or areas of the collective agreement that are purely transactional? So that's also something that we've noticed, that there's fewer complaints or grievances around I'm not being treated well, I've been discriminated against, etc., and more around, well, you didn't really follow the process in Article 5 around X, Y, and Z. So that's also like, it's an informal indicator, but it's a signal of the focus is on different things. And then last but not least, just the types of conversations we're able to have with managers is a clear indicator, right? We're going from having conversations around respect in the workplace and being focused on that in some of the conversations, to other things that are much more strategic, much more around the success of the organization in the future. So those are some of the ways, some of the metrics that we have. So formal ones and informal ones.
Thank you for sharing that, Manuelita, because for divide, you phrase it so beautifully. This is the first time I'm hearing like there's a formal and informal. That's such a good way, because the formal ones, okay, I'm going to throw you the information, but these things you already know. Our listeners probably already know, right? But these informal ones, and I've been seeing it more and more often. Like we did a webinar with one of our customers, AMC. AMC is a cinema in the US.
Yeah.
And they said the same thing. Like, yes, you have the numbers from surveys and polls, but how you narrate the story will still depend on you listening in, having those conversations with your people. So I think it's becoming more and more common that, yes, there's survey, but you have to listen to create the narrative. A follow-up question for me there is, how are you how do you make it intentional? Like, is it like a monthly kind of meeting that you set, or how does that work for you?
So one of the things that I would say we're fortunate enough to have set at ROM is we have regular management meetings. So we have biweekly meetings with the senior management team. We also have regular meetings with the executive leadership team. We have quarterly town halls, sometimes more often than quarterly, where we're able to share some senior management team meetings. That's where we share a lot of that information and have an opportunity for people to ask questions, discussion, and follow up on whatever may be of interest or of concern. The metrics we're doing, the overall metrics formal, we're doing half yearly. And as we've been able to see trends, that's also something that we're able to talk about. And then we've got other things that are weekly or biweekly, such as recruiting and those things that are very, very dynamic and that will change from week to week. We do keep track of them on a more regular basis.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. Now, being cognizant of the time, I want to zoom out a bit and talk about your leadership philosophy. So your leadership style, it's a balance of empathy and accountability. You did that so beautifully, and I've been following you on your socials, and so I can see you're really an advocate for that. I wanted to hear, like, how do you approach the balance between accountability and empathy, especially when you're leading through change?
Yeah. So when leading through change, we all say and recognize that change is hard, and depending on people's natural tendency or their life experience, it can be harder for some than for others. So really important as a first kind of guiding principle to listen and to try and understand what is going on with people, because they may have resistance, or they may have concerns, or they may be feeling impacts or foreseeing an impact that is not necessarily obvious just looking at them or just looking at the surface. So really listening and asking questions and trying to understand. The second guiding principle for me is looking for creative solutions. So there's a lot of gray in HR. We know, it's human beings. So not everything is black and white. And in fact, I would say that things are rarely black and white when dealing with human beings. So really looking at what is the concern? What are people trying to, are there creative solutions to help them, either support them or really share information that they may not have, that they may not have understood, making sure there's clarity and expectations, and always really focusing on that communication so that we're optimizing it. It's not always perfect, but that's another guiding principle for me. And then really when we're looking at those creative solutions, what is fit for purpose, as I like to call it? What corresponds to the situation, to the circumstances, to the context? So, a solution that may work in a larger organization for different types of people may not necessarily work in our environment or for the people that we're looking to support and bring along. And then last but not least, and this addresses a lot of the accountability piece, it's keeping the end objective, the priorities, the strategy in view. So having regular check-ins. Are we aligned with what we're trying to achieve? As we're making decisions, as we're looking at solutions even, are they going to help us continue moving forward, or are they going to hold us back or derail us? So that for me is also key. What's the end goal? And let's make sure that we have regular check-ins to make sure we're still aligned.
Amazing. I love that. Basically, for you, what I've heard is more number one is understanding human beings, not being black and white, and just
Mhm.
really listening. But at the same time, because they're human, they need reminder. You always
Yeah.
have to constantly check
Mhm.
in and
Check.
not wait for the end of the year and say you didn't achieve it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love that concept of understanding first that they're human
Mhm.
and then reinforcing the objectives of the organization. It's a very thoughtful way or approach to use. And no wonder you've been so successful in driving change and building because
Yeah.
that human thing is what builds trust. Now, speaking of change, the world of HR is evolving so rapidly. And
Yes.
honestly, everything is just evolving so rapidly with
Yes.
AI
Yes.
and
Yeah.
all of these things, right? So, what trends do you see shaping the future of HR and employee experience in general? And how are you and Rom preparing for those
Okay, it's a big, big question. So I'm going to talk about some of the trends and some of the things that we are doing, or some of the things that we know we have yet to do. Because the reality is that every organization will have areas where they're really addressing, and then other areas that they haven't been able to prioritize yet. So you talked about AI, automation. AI is here. It's being used to varying degrees by our employees even now. And it is something that is the future and that people do need to pick up skills. So some of the things that we have started doing, and again, beginning of the journey, is really using some of the tools that we have access to. For example, Microsoft Copilot is something that is available to all employees, and it's the basic version, but people are being encouraged to play with it and do testing there. We have our HR team is very focused on getting educated around AI, so all opportunities that we have for education have been, a focus for the team. And we're also sharing now with employees, not only from an HR perspective, but also our IT team has been sharing opportunities for learning and to understand the basics around AI. Another thing that is, I would say, related to the growing use of AI and the future of AI is really people picking up skills that have to do with not only technology, but also just change agility. Because as we continue seeing all kinds of change within our environment, our context, it becomes more and more important for people to have that agility, have really that resilience in dealing with change. So some of the things we're doing is we're starting at the top to educate our managers around change, agility, and dealing with change and leading change. and then we'll be helping the employees subsequently. So that's a future thing that we will continue to focus on. Other things I would say are people looking for more flexibility. And that's a tricky one because as a government agency, we don't have all the flexibility that we might want, but there are still opportunities to show flexibility where we do have the ability. So when requests come up from employees, first we would look at, okay, so what are the parameters that we have to stay within? And then inside of those parameters, what are some things that we are able to do? Again, that creative solution finding, but it's solutions that are fit for purpose and for the circumstance. And then I would say that last but not least, there's actually, that's not last, before last, this continued need for HR to be able to speak business language, to be able to be perceived as business partners who have an HR or a people specialty. That is an opportunity for the future. And that is an area that is really going to impact not only organizations, but HR specifically. And that need to continue learning about the business and understanding the business, understanding the language, and really making that link is going to continue to be more and more. And then I would say that the last one I'd want to mention is really around I won't call it an opportunity, but the challenge around external events impacting what's going on in the workplace. One huge example is COVID, right? That was something that wasn't necessarily industry specific or country specific, but that did have a lot of impact on the workforce and on what happens inside organizations. And there are a lot of events like that. More and more, it seems that that HR needs to be aware of and needs to be able to react to and support the business in dealing with.
All of the things you have shared is so exciting, except the last one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just so great to hear that you're trying to stay ahead of the curve on most of the items. Not the last one. We don't want that. But
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
yeah, we want. You're just showing basically on based on what you've said that you are not just reacting, or you're not just going to react to the change. You're going to lead the change, because right now you're already educating your leaders how to be more agile, how to be more resilient to change. And I really like that piece that you shared. So yeah, thank you. Now, before we wrap up, I'd love to ask a bit personal question, I would say. What advice would you give to women in internal communications, employee experience, HR, who are looking to grow their careers and make an impact like what you're doing right now?
Yeah. So a few things come to mind. One of the things that's been like a huge influence for me, and that I think I would say women need to look at is that curiosity, that openness, that learning focus will serve them well as they're growing their career, because it will have them on the lookout for opportunities, whether it's for mentoring, whether it's for changes in job industry, whether it's working on initiatives internally or outside their organization that will help them to grow and learn. I would say, as I mentioned earlier, just for HR specifically, and it may be for other functions also, just that understanding of the business, that understanding of the organization. So really looking beyond the function that you're in and trying to understand what are priorities in the organization, what are the objectives, what are the drivers, what's the context. Because as much as it can be tempting, especially as you're building your career, to really focus on your current job, your current function, the opportunities to be a more strategic partner or to grow really come from understanding what's going on around you, and really making sure that you're able to align your work or your objectives with that. The other thing I would say is building relationships with stakeholders. So not only potential mentors, not only people who are within the same function or within the same organization, but reach out, open up to people who are not in the same organization, people who are not in the same industry. Because again, huge opportunities for learning, for networking. And as you're building your career, that's always a venue or a way to hear about other opportunities or to learn more. And when you're leading a team, just your role will be to one of the key parts of your role as a functional leader to make sure that the team is aligned with whatever is going on in the organization. So fighting that very comfortable place of just focusing on the team and on the function and making sure that what you're doing in the team, especially if you have to prioritize given resources, is aligned with where the organization is going. Because then you'll be seen as a true business partner. And that's a very positive thing.
That's such a very empowering advice, getting the alignment to be seen as a business partner. And as you're saying it, it actually reminds me of what my mom is always telling me. Like, when you work for a company, treat it as if it's your own. Learn every piece of the business. Don't just focus on your role. Like, you know, see how you can contribute more, because as you said, that's when you're going to be seen as an actual business partner and not just an employee. Another thing that stands out to me is when you mentioned to reach out. I love that because in a book that I read, something is mentioned about leading without authority, right? Like, indirectly, all these people are now part of your team, is part of your network. And then in the future, as you grow your career, they can, I won't say stepping stone, but they can help you, can push you up. They can be your advocates. So yeah, thank you so much for pointing those out, Manuelita. I love those. I know our listeners took so much away from that. So now, before we end, I want to do a quick rapid fire round. So this is going to be, I have 3 questions. I'll just say one question each. So question, answer, question, answer.
Okay, sure.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'm ready.
Perfect. So let's start the rapid fire time. What is your go-to productivity hack?
I would say using technology to keep track of tasks, projects, etc.
Love that. And one thing that you can't live without at work?
I would say my laptop.
Yes.
I bring it to every meetings. I don't like taking paper notes, and I've been like that for quite a while. I like being able to type directly my notes into the laptop, to be able to refer to documents instead of printing pages and pages and pages. So yeah, definitely my laptop.
I love those answers. It's always fun to kind of get a glimpse into the personal side of our guests. So thank you for humoring me there, Manuelita. And thank you so much for sharing your story, your insights, your time, and your passion for empowering talent with us. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Elevate. Before we end, do you want to promote anything coming up, or?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure. And, it's great to be able to talk about some of the things that I really care about and that have made a difference in my life also. So promoting ROM is a museum that people love. We've always got new exhibitions. So I encourage people to come often, bring your friends, bring your family. Also bring those who might not have thought of going to a museum, because that first experience can be the most impactful for them. And you're helping them to discover something that is unique and different, and hopefully enrich their lives. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. Now I want to fly to I want to fly to Ontario right now. But yeah, again, thank you so much, Manuelita. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Elevate. If today's conversation sparked any ideas about improving your own organization, we want to help you take the next step. At Line Zero, we offer a complimentary personalized employee experience assessment. Our consultants, our expert, can spend some time with you and your team. We want to help you evaluate your unique employee experience ecosystem, because every organization is just different. And based on understanding your specific challenges that you face in engaging and supporting your workforce, we can help you kind of craft some solutions there. You can learn more by visiting us at linezero.com. The link to our page is going to be in the description. I also personally encourage you to follow Manuelita Cherizard on LinkedIn to see more of her amazing work at The Wrong. And finally, Please be sure to follow us on Spotify. We have Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and LinkedIn at Line Zero for more conversations with inspiring leaders like Manuelita who are shaping the future of work. Until then, keep elevating, keep inspiring, and let's make every workplace a place where people thrive. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Manuelita.
Thank you.